If you want the Raiders to re-sign Josh Jacobs, spam JJ. Coming up here on today's show, we're going to get into the news around the Las Vegas Raiders not franchise tagging their star running back. Yes, it was expected, but I do think that at the end of the day, there's a lot of people here in the silver and black, AP included, Max Crosby as well, that want to bring back their star running back. And if that's also you, spam JJ. Raider Nation, what's going on? It's Mitchell Renz here, host of the Raiders Report, and today's Josh Jacobs news is sponsored by 8 Sleep. If you're up late last night wondering, are the Raiders going to franchise tag Josh Jacobs? It's probably because you don't have the 8 Sleep pod. If you want to get the best rest that you've ever had, go to 8sleep.com/chatsports. That link's going to be available to y'all down in the comments and down in the description of today's show. So coming up here is the Raiders did not franchise tag Josh Jacobs at the 4 p.m. Eastern deadline today, which was exactly what was expected. Based off everything that we heard from Media Day at the Super Bowl, from the NFL Combine last week, it was always known that the Raiders were not going to franchise tag their star running back, which now I know a lot of Raider fans are like, all right, we knew that. Now, how do we move on? Where do we go from here? I'll tell you how the Raiders are going to handle this situation, and I'll also tell you how Jacobs' team is talking to the Raiders and how they want this situation to be handled. Before we get into that, though, a little bit more of the background information, which is Jacobs not being tagged. It would have cost the Raiders $14.15 million to tag Jacobs, which originally it was going to be $13.6, but then the salary cap went up, which now makes the figure $14.15. And he's going to hit free agency for the first time in his entire career, which is kind of a wild thing. And the free agency class of running backs is very, very stacked right now. The Raiders are still hoping that he ends up coming back, and Jacobs is still hoping that he ends up returning to this team. I mean, shit, he's got it tatted on him, for goodness sake. Hell, I got it tatted on me, and I know this. I'm not going anywhere. So if you want to stay informed around the Las Vegas Raiders, make sure you click that subscribe button for the latest news and rumors around this team. And I know a lot of you are like, Mitch, we knew the Raiders weren't going to tag Jacobs. You're right. It's because you watch this show and probably because you stay in tune with the Raiders. If you're watching this for the first time and you go, wow, I actually didn't know that the Raiders weren't planning on tagging Jacobs, I'm just going to look at it. You should hit that subscribe button. So with the Raiders deciding to not tag Jacobs coming off the worst season of his career, which, let's keep it a spade here, right? Like, Jacobs is coming off the worst year of his career. 233 carries, 805 yards, only 3.5 yards per carry. That's not all on Jacobs. The Raiders' offensive line struggled at times, though. They were a top 12 offensive line unit. Like, let's also be real here. The reason why Jacobs struggled, and the reason why I think the running game struggled in general this year, was more due to the quarterback play. Brian Hoyer, Jimmy Garoppolo stacked boxes up against them. I did think that the Raiders in general did run the ball a little bit more effectively with Aiden O'Connell, but that's also because Zamir White was able to show out. I think all Las Vegas fans, all Raider fans are hoping that Jacobs can get back to that 2022 metric where he led the entire league with over 2,000 total yards. I don't foresee that happening, but at the end of the day, you're going to be able to have a running back who, since he was drafted in round 1, picked 24 overall back in 2019. He's got 40 total rushing touchdowns. When he is 100% healthy, and when he is 100% motivated, because based on the conversations that I've had with Jacobs' team, I think Josh even knows a little bit that he wasn't 100% where he feels that he should have been to start last season. And sometimes you need a little bit of a reality check is what I'll call it. But at the end of the day, I want a guy that wants to be a part of this team. Josh Jacobs wants to be a part of this team, but he also wants to get the money that he feels that he deserves, being the top running back on the market. So coming up here, I spoke with Jacobs' team yesterday, and for a lot of y'all that watched our live show yesterday, that checked out the video that dropped yesterday as well, you're going to know the information that's in this video. Here's the thing, though. I know there's a lot of people that don't watch our show every single day, so I had the opportunity to sit down, talk to Josh Jacobs' team, and they told me what they're looking for, what Josh is looking for, and where contract negotiations sit right now with the Silver and Black. Before I get into that, though, I don't know if you guys can tell, I slept like a freaking baby yesterday, and that's because of our awesome sponsor. Shout out to 8 Sleep, and it's the perfect sponsor in regards to Josh Jacobs. Shout out, spam those 8s down below. Today's episode is brought to you by 8 Sleep, the high-tech solution to your age-old sleeping issues. 8 Sleep Pod 3 cover slips right over your mattress, bringing heat and cooling tech that keeps you comfortable and sleeping deeper for a better, more restful night. If anybody wants to go get this product, you can see the link. It's going to be down in the comments. It's also going to be in the description. You can go to 8sleep.com/chatsports and get $200 off plus free shipping on the pod cover by 8 Sleep. Invest in the rest you deserve with the 8 Sleep pod. In addition to keeping you at the perfect temperature all night, the pod also tracks your sleep and health metrics on average. Pod users see their sleep quality improve by 32% after just a month on the pod. My personal favorite thing about this, and fellas, if you're with me here, spam me down below. I like to sleep, and I need it to be cold. Alex, when she sleeps, I swear she wants to be in a sauna. And then on top of that, I got my dog Chuck. He's 75 pounds. He always finds a way to just snuggle in between my legs or just right underneath my arm, even though he thinks that he's still a puppy. But bottom line is, I don't want to sweat. And the cool part about the pod cover, it's going to improve your sleep by automatically adjusting your bed's temperature based on your individual needs. So think about this. The bed can be as low as 55 degrees, and then it can also go up to 110 degrees. So funny story, Alex will probably hate me for telling you all this, but the one morning I was trying to get Alex up out of bed. I'm an early riser. It's easier for me to get up. And I cranked that sucker up. I cranked the heat up on that thing to a point where she got really warm and she was like, what the hell is going on? Got her right out of bed. I'm just saying, if your wife struggles getting out of bed, if you struggle getting out of bed, or if the women that are watching the show and your husband struggles getting out of bed, you crank that temperature up to 110 degrees, I promise you this, they're getting up out of bed. Shout out to 8 Sleep for sponsoring the Raiders Report. Again, if you want to go get started, it's 8sleep.com/chatsports. Link's going to be available to y'all down in the comments and in the description of today's show. All right, so coming up here, let's talk about what I spoke with Josh Jacobs' team about in regards to the latest going on around the contract negotiations. Now, some of the notes that you're about to see may be a little bit less time sensitive, so just keep aware of that. But every note that you see is based on my conversation with Jacobs' team yesterday, and that phone call went about 20 minutes. So Jacobs' team met with the Raiders at the Combine, and Jacobs, from what I understand, was not a part of that conversation. All I know is that it was Jacobs' agent and then Tom Delaney and Tom Telesco. The main clear message that I gathered from that meeting at the Combine was Jacobs wants to stay in Vegas, and then also the Raiders want to keep Jacobs back here with the silver and black. We know that Antonio Pierce has called Jacobs the heart and soul of this team. I know that Max Crosby wants him to remain here, and based off the players that I've talked to, it is very, very important for the Raiders to do right by Jacobs and keep him. Also, based on conversations that I've had, Telesco wants to do a better job, and this is one of the things that he said at his press conference at the Combine, that he wants to show these players, and he wants to earn the respect of these guys and say, like, you know what? If you're a part of this team and you help us build, I want to do a better job of bringing you back. And if you're the new GM, and if Antonio Pierce, you're trying to earn that respect considering the fact of we know where the Raiders players stood with Josh McDaniels. They just don't want to go down that path again. So even though the Raiders haven't talked numbers or contract length yet, which I was a little bit surprised by and kind of disappointed, and it kind of reminds me of last offseason where the Raiders waited till the very last moment, and the very first time the Raiders had contact with Jacobs in a contract last offseason, which if you remember the tag deadline, or like the final day to get a long-term deal done, was July 17th. The first time the Raiders talked to Jacobs and his team was on July 7th, and the fact that the franchise tag deadline was literally today and that there still hasn't been any conversations, it just kind of shows that, again, there was no plan to ever franchise tag him. The good news, though, is that Tom Delaney was in that conversation, and he's going to be the one that manufactures and does a lot of the contract numbers for the Raiders. It's not Telesco, it's Delaney, who's one of the best in the biz at it. So because Delaney was a part of that meeting, I would take that as the Raiders are very serious about bringing back Jacobs. However, the other thing that I was told by Jacobs' team was that they're going to wait to see what the Giants do with Saquon Barkley. The Giants did not franchise tag Barkley today. He's going to hit the open market. And now, even though the Giants have indicated that they're interested in bringing back Barkley, Jacobs has been told and is under the impression that he is going to be the top running back on the free agent market. In regards to money, they were shooting high in terms of, like, my literal question to them was, all right, you're sitting down in the room. What's the first deal that you're putting in front of the Raiders of how much money you want Jacobs to get? The number that they told me was $14 million, and that was based off of what Jonathan Taylor is making per year right now. They also knew, Jacobs' team understood, that the Raiders weren't going to give a $14 million deal to Jacobs because Taylor's a little bit younger and Jacobs is coming off the year that he did. However, one thing that was very, very clear to me is that Jacobs and his team are looking for a 2 to 3 year deal. It's not a 1 year deal. They would settle, like they wouldn't be happy on a 1 year deal, but it is something that they would rather not do. 2 year deal with some good guaranteed money would be okay. When I hear good guaranteed money, I'm thinking like 75% of that contract, or a 3 year deal with 2 years totally guaranteed. So coming up here on the show, I'm going to tell you what Spotrac and PFF projects the contract that Josh Jacobs gets. I'm also going to show you the projected contract based off my conversations with Jacobs' team of what I believe the star running back could get. However, you're seeing right now on screen a lot of question marks. I always tell you my projections. I always give you my thoughts. This show is built on the idea of all of us sitting in a room right now, all 1,000 of us, having a real-life conversation of what would you give Jacob? So guess what? The only thing that I want you to comment on this video, especially if you made it this far, is let me know in a comment how many years you think he's going to get. What's the total money you believe Jacobs is going to get? How much money per year you think he's going to get? And then the guarantees. I understand that's a lot to ask for. But you know what? If you just take 2 minutes, you think about it, you write it down, and then when I talk about this entire offseason, you can stay close to your numbers, and then you can say, hey, Mitch, I told you so. So the projected numbers here for Josh Jacobs based off PFF, they believe a 3-year deal for $33 million with $18 million guaranteed. That puts him at about $11 million per year. Spotrac has him at 4 years, $42.7 million with $10.6 million. I'll tell you this, Spotrac needs to wake the hell up, because if they think that any running back is going to get a 4-year deal in today's market, it's just blasphemy to me. Like, even when I was talking to Jacobs' team, like, they flat out said the days of running backs getting 4 to 5 year deals is over. Like, even asking for a 3-year deal anymore seems like a lot for a back, even if they have the pedigree of a guy like Jacobs. So to me, based off my conversations with Jacobs' agent and his team, what I came together was option A, a 2-year, $22 million deal with $15 million guaranteed. So it's a little bit of a shorter deal, a little bit of extra money on the $11 million per year, the $15 million guaranteed. So it's 75% basically of his contract being fully guaranteed. Option B, 3 years, $30 million with $20 million guaranteed. So his first 2 years on that contract, fully guaranteed. And then if Las Vegas wants to be able to move on after that final year, they have the flexibility in order to do so. One player who I know wants Josh Jacobs back is Max Crosby. He posted this picture on his Instagram, and as you can see, it's him and Jacobs. They're hugging it out. He tagged Jacobs. But if you can see something, it's the little fingers crossed emoji. Now, for the inside joke, I don't think that Jacobs... if you know the inside joke of the fingers crossed, let me know. But Jacobs wants to return to the silver and black. He has been very, very, in the past, maybe not vocal about it, but this is his way of showing you, based off people who I talk to that are very close to Jacobs, he's a man of few words. He wants to return to the Raiders. He wants to be a part of this organization. He wants to be a part of something bigger, and that is here in Las Vegas. Coming up next here, though, we're going to get into NFL franchise tag news to know. There was a lot of players that were tagged today. There was a lot of players that were not tagged today. So, essentially, what we're going to do here is we're going to roll through all the players that were tagged. We're also going to talk about some notable dudes that were not tagged by their respective teams. So the first tag that happened was not today. It happened basically last week. T. Higgins might have happened 2 weeks ago at this point. The Bengals non-exclusive tag on Higgins. If you're like, Mitch, what's the non-exclusive tag? It's exactly what the Raiders placed on Jacobs last year, which is essentially if you want this player, you got to trade, but you got to give up 2 first-round picks, and you're going to have to pay them. Bottom line, it ain't going to happen. L'Jarius Sneed, non-exclusive tag here by the Kansas City Chiefs, which they decided to tag Sneed, not Chris Jones, which means Chris Jones is going to hit the open market. He's going to be the #1 free agent out there. Brian Burns, he's going to make his deal. He's going to be an outside linebacker, $24 million. On top of that, Justin Madubuike, who was my #1 free agent target for Las Vegas. Based on the age and based on how much I thought he was going to get, this is why I had him at #1, just best fit overall. With him not being there anymore, there's another name that I am now going to put at my #1 target for Las Vegas. Antoine Winfield Jr., he ended up getting the exclusive tag for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Really curious to see what Tampa Bay does. They just gave Mike Evans a 2-year contract at $26 million per year? Are they going to bring back Baker Mayfield, who apparently could get in the market of a 4-year deal at $120 million? That's wild to me. Josh Allen, the other edge rusher, he's getting $24.1 million. Jalen Johnson, he ended up getting a non-exclusive tag by the Chicago Bears, and Johnson was the number one free agent cornerback out on the market, and I thought that maybe Las Vegas could be interested based on his ties with Champ Kelly and AP wanting a cornerback one. Michael Pittman Jr., he got the non-exclusive tag, which happened literally like just before we decided to go live here on the show. So I know a receiver that's been mentioned a few times to us here in the chat. He's not going to be coming. The transition tag was placed on Kyle Duggar for the New England Patriots, which those rules are a little bit different. It's not going to cost you the first-round pick, or it's not going to cost you 2 first-round picks. It has to do more with like the overall contract. But Duggar, if they would have gave him the exclusive tag, I want to say it would have been like $17.8 million. Because they gave him the transition tag, it's only $13.8 million. Some players that were not tagged that I think is notable. Now, my number one free agent target, maybe outside of Chris Jones, is going to be Christian Wilkins. Has worked with Rob Leonard and would be a great fit on the middle here for this team. Another player not tagged was Saquon Barkley, which this is more of a, if you want to stay up to date on Jacobs, the other important way, the cherry on top, the way that you're going to get extra credit with me and a lot of other Raider fans, is if you also follow along with Saquon, because Jacobs' team flat out told me they are going to monitor Saquon Barkley's situation, just like Saquon Barkley's team is going to monitor the Josh Jacobs situation. Other players that are set to hit the open market, you got Baker Mayfield. You're talking Michael Iwaniu, I can never pronounce his name. Calvin Ridley, name to keep in mind. Jacobs now hitting it. Xavier McKinney for agency is going to be up and popping. We're going to be having a hell of a time. We're going to be live a lot next week. To make sure that you don't miss any of the Raiders signings, hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications.